Good Sunday evening, folks. Happy early Thanksgiving. It is quarterfinal week in the LHSAA football playoffs. I'm Jarrett Rose of Louisiana versus all y'all. He's Chance Hester of Louisiana Football Report, doing as we have started to do these last couple of years, a weekly show during playoff time, just kind of looking back at the biggest storylines of the previous week, as well as some of the great matchups of the week ahead. And we're getting to that point now as we get ready for the quarters where it gets that much more exciting to look at. Just 64 teams left standing, 64 teams that'll get to practice on Thanksgiving weekend. And so the degree of competition just ramps up that much more each week. And we had some good ones this past week, so that's saying a lot. But we'll get into all of it as we do, going bracket by bracket, starting with small schools and leading up to big schools. But Chance, congrats to you guys over at Catholic High for advancing, obviously. And how are you doing this weekend overall as you kind of look around the state?
Well, if it looks like I'm red in the face, it's because I am, because both of my football teams eked out 3-point wins over teams they should have smoked. So other than that, I'm doing great. Friday night was obviously great for us, at Memorial Stadium. Captain Shreve, Coach Wilburn, what a group of guys, just super, super tough, gave us all we wanted, lots of speed, lots of talent on both sides of the ball, super big up front. And so, hats off to the Gators, traveled down, brought a really nice crowd, down to Memorial Stadium and played well. Looking at the brackets, man, just, I'd say just more of what we expected. But, there's a lot of teams that are just refusing to go away. They're refusing to move on to basketball season, as some people might say this time of year. We'll talk about them, but those pesky Bar Buccaneers just won't die. And so there's a lot of teams kind of like that. A lot of teams kind of similar to them that are just refusing to say die, not really looking at the brackets and listening to the outside noise and what other people might be saying about them. And so, Barb's not the only one that's dancing this week when people thought they maybe shouldn't be. But you got to mention those guys for sure.
Barb, a 26 seed in the Division I non-select bracket, the lowest seeded team to advance in this year's quarters. So when we get up to Division I non-select toward the back end of the show, there'll certainly be someone we're talking an awful lot about. And that bracket in D1 non-select, one of two brackets where we have three double-digit seeds advancing. And so particularly amongst the bigger schools on the non-select side, we got a little bit of chaos, but only one bracket where we have chalk completely of 1 through 8 all advancing. A couple of brackets, the only difference is a 9 beating an 8, and so just a little bit of upset dynamic, and those games are always so tough to call. But only one bracket of 8 divisions where we have seeds 1 through 8 advancing, and that was the D2 select bracket. And so another one that we'll get to in just a little bit. But let's get into some of these D4 matchups. We'll start with select this week. I think we've been starting with the non-selects, and so just kind of mixing it up. Looking at that D4 select bracket, Westminster Christian 48-35 win over Opelousas Catholic, getting the best of a rematch from that crazy District 5 1A, I believe it is, and they'll have another one ahead. St. Edmund, the 9 seed, going down to Covenant Christian, getting the 44-36 win, and so we'll get a Westminster Christian and St. Ed's quarterfinal rematch of a Week 10 game. Ascension Catholic rolls St. Mary's 62-9 to advance. Catholic Point Capee 46-18 over Westminster Christian of Lafayette to advance. Two teams from the Baton Rouge area, but from different districts that will see each other in New Roads on Friday. Hamilton Christian, a team we're about to talk a good bit about. Just a lot going on out there for those Warriors as they try and make, try to continue making some history after their top regular season in school history, I believe. The 3 seed gets a 27-14 win against St. Frederick, the 14 seed, despite all of the challenges going on out there. 6-seeded Ascension Episcopal edges out 11-seeded Kentwood 17-14, and so Hamilton Christian and Ascension Episcopal will be a quarterfinal. Ouachita Christian, a 38-0 shutout of Southern Lab and a 7-10 game to advance, and will now head south to face Riverside Academy, which rolled Delta Charter 63-6, and so OCS and Riverside are one quarterfinal after some dominant performances. And I guess let's go like quarterfinal matchup by quarterfinal matchup, and we can say whatever we need to about those teams, how they got there, or what we're looking forward to. And so let's start up top, man, with Westminster Christian and St. Edmunds. After those wins that were 2-score games by the end of them to each advance, what kind of stands out at the top of that bracket?
Man, I think Westminster. I think that was a really big game for them. Obviously every playoff game is huge, but like, yes, you're playing the 16 seed. Yes, it's a district match. Yes, you're supposed to win. But remember, we talked about Westminster. It has been a while since they've been in a position like this to be a super high seed. So you have something to prove no matter what your seed is, I feel like, in the playoffs. And so, going out, it's tough to beat a good team twice, and Opelousas Catholic is a good football team. And obviously, the Crusaders gave up some points, but they were able to kind of score at will against the Vikings. And so put themselves in a position to host once again against a St. Edmund team that is going to be a pesky team to put away on the day after Thanksgiving. Covenant Christian was up 30-16 at halftime. And Covenant Christian this year obviously had another very successful year. A big overtime win over 4-seeded from the non-select side, Jeanerette in district. Very few blemishes on their record. And so CCA's up 30-16 at half. Everything looks really good for the Lions. And, I mean, St. Ed ended up taking that one, like you said, 44-36, man. Like, just an offensive explosion by the Blue Jays in the second half, proving that they can score points on even really, really good defenses like Covenant Christian has. So now it sets up a really, really fun quarterfinal matchup. I was wrong about district rematches last week. I'm right about this one, right? Like, this is a district rematch, correct?
Yeah, this
Okay,
is one I was actually at in week 10 that decided the
Yes.
district.
Yeah, I'm about to say I don't want them to come for me in the comments. And so St. Ed's gets St. Edmund, obviously a team that they're familiar with, and like we said, for Westminster, it's hard to beat a good team twice. They did it against Opelousas Catholic. Can they do it again? And set up potentially another district rematch.
Yeah.
That's surely never happened. If they play 3 straight district teams in the playoffs, I need to see some history if that's ever happened. But it surely hasn't happened very often.
Yeah, I'd have to go back. The instance in which it would have potentially happened would be maybe somewhere early in D1 select before some of the other teams got added, if there was an instance where a Catholic League team potentially did so. But it seems like the teams that were making deeper runs at that point were running into either Catholic of Baton Rouge or Bird somewhere along the way to kind of mix things up. That Westminster Opelousas Catholic game in the regular season was just a 2-point game. And so I know a lot of folks, we see it every single year. Close district wins turn into playoff losses and rematches, just the nature of 2 evenly matched teams and the nature of, the human element and of trying to get a bunch of teenagers to realize, hey, that, the fact that we won that game means absolutely nothing now come November. But credit to Westminster Christian for taking care of business and winning this one a little bit more handily. And now they'll have to face a St. Ed's team that, again, I was out at that one. And Westminster Christian opened up a pretty big lead in that game, only for St. Ed's to come back and have a chance there late. So we've seen some of the second half ability of St. Edmunds in some big games, including this past week. You detailed the comeback against Covenant Christian. Will be interesting. Both these teams have good upperclassmen quarterbacks and some talent all over the field. Big physical running backs they like a lot. Kyle Horde at Westminster Christian is a kid that I didn't know a lot about until I had a chance to see them, and he's fantastic. Wyatt Dubois, the 2-way standout for St. Ed's, is just, an all-around MVP, small school, like hard-nosed type guy at linebacker and running back who is one of the better players in this bracket as well. So that'll be a good one. You mentioned if Catholic Point Capee can get a win against Ascension Catholic, it would set up either way with Westminster or St. Ed another 5-1A rematch, but that's going to be a tall task against Ascension Catholic and Trevin Simon and company, the way that he runs the ball and the way that they play defense. What's your kind of initial outlook on Ascension Catholic Point Capee, and whether how they got there or what you're looking forward to on Friday night?
Man, people probably wondered, how Ascension Catholic was going to replace that running back of theirs from last year. Was it Elsie? And it seems like they
Chad
found
Elsie.
a guy. All right. It seems like they found a guy. All right. man, Ascension Catholic just, golly, like it seems like every year, and I'm saying this from experience. I've coached against these guys in the same district. They got a running back every single year. They grow them on trees in Donaldsonville. It's absolutely nuts. Just how good they are running the football, man. You know, like a lot of 1A teams don't always have the guys up front, you know, size wise consistently, especially a private school. But like, man, it's super impressive what they're able to do every single year. And what they've shown in recent years is, hey, it doesn't matter who the head coach is, because they've had quite a few head coaches in the last decade. You know, the type of kid hasn't changed. Like hard nosed, tough. You know, they don't ever have a letdown. Like if you look at their schedule, when they play teams they're supposed to beat, they wipe the floor with them. And when they play up in competition, man, they give, like recently, look at when they've played Dunham and teams like that, and they usually give those teams all they want and more. And when it comes playoff time, Ascension Catholic is ready for deep runs like this. So they are going to go on the road, which hasn't really been the thing for them lately. They've put themselves in a position in recent years to kind of dictate their schedule of where they play playoff games. So, you know, still technically the Baton Rouge area, but a little bit of a decent trip from Donaldsonville to New Roads. So they're going to go face a Catholic Appoint Compete team who came through that really tough battle-tested district that we've talked so much about. Another team known for running the football really, really well. You know, this is going to be a team, a game that I think is decided on who bends but doesn't break defensively. You know, who's the one that's able to get, like, I think about when you're playing like a John Curtis or an Acadiana or like a team like that runs the ball just so well, and your thought is, man, if we can make them punt 3 times, we probably got this one. And so I think in a game like this, that's kind of the same mindset. Like, hey, if we can make Ascension Catholic, you know, if we can stop them 3 times and make them punt, same thing on the other side. Like, if we can get 3 stops, you know, can we win a shootout? With 2 teams that run the ball like super, super well. And I think you're going to see a similar style going into this one.
Yeah, we mentioned some of that running game of Ascension Catholic, and I mentioned when we were getting started, the running back this year, Trevin Simon. He is a guy that, after everything that Chad Elsey did the last couple of years, and as much as we talked last year about when you're setting running records at Ascension Catholic, it says a lot because they have a long-standing tradition of some great ones at that position. The fact that now a year later, Trevin is chasing some of those Chad Elsey numbers is pretty wild and pretty impressive. But Catholic Point Compete is still, I mean, just right there. They're the higher seed. They'll be at home in New Roads for this one. Great job by those guys. Also graduated a good senior class last year. Really good senior class with guys that went on to college and are right back quarterfinal time once again. For Ascension Catholic, I know this is the 4th straight year they've been in at least the quarters, and so they're one of those teams that we'll talk about several through the course of this show. They expect to be there every single week, practicing on Thanksgiving week, and Catholic Point Compete is kind of getting that way now as well. Bottom half of the bracket, don't have a ton on the second round games of Hamilton Christian versus St. Fred and Ascension Episcopal versus Kentwood, other than obviously mention the scores. A 13-point win for the Warriors and just a 3-point win for Ascension Episcopal getting past Kentwood. But this is a really interesting 3-6 matchup. And I think for me, the thing that stands out as much as anything is we're not going to get into a lot of details of the Hamilton Christian dynamic, but obviously some concerning things going on out there and a lot of legal dynamics and changes of leadership out there. And through all of that, this football team managed to get a playoff win. And so for the kids that are there and able to play and deal with some of that, credit to them for being able to win at a tough time of year to win despite a lot of issues going on, clearly, allegedly.
You know, I will obviously, like you said, I won't say a lot about it because, 1, I don't know anything. None of us really do. And 2, it ain't none of my business. So it ain't for us, obviously, to talk about. But what I do want to mention, like you said, man, like, you know how easy it is to get distracted when you're a teenager, especially a teenage boy. Like, you and I are both former teenage boys. So we're well aware of how easy it is to be distracted. Man, like,
I get distracted about 47 times a day now.
Yeah. So the ability of a group of high school boys to completely put aside something that really has nothing to do with them, But it's obviously very much on their minds, because how could it not be? For them to put all that aside and go win a playoff game, I don't care if you're the higher seed. I don't care if you're at home. I don't care any of the circumstances. I don't care if you're playing 11 versus 4 out there. The fact that they were able to go get it done it just speaks, I think, volumes to just how tough these kids are, man. Like, no matter who you are, no matter who you're playing, I want to pat on the back the kids of Hamilton Christian, and the job that they were able to go do on Friday night against a St. Fred's team that is always a tough out, no matter what seed they are or anything like that. And so my hat's off to the kids at Hamilton Christian for just the resiliency that they showed this week.
No, they'll probably need to show some good resilience again this week coming, because I do think that Ascension Episcopal matchup is going to be an interesting one. Looks like a field goal as time expired is what lifted Ascension Episcopal through that game. 30-yarder by Andrew McCormick, who I know, just looking through some special teams players of the week candidates each week throughout this season, McCormick's been fantastic for them. And so when you have a high school kicker that you can rely on in that way, that certainly is real nice when you get into some of these close games. And I imagine that this 3-6 matchup will be another pretty tight one, and so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll be talking about kickers a little bit later on. There was some kicker heroics throughout the state, but man, this is going to be a good one. Ascension Episcopal is a team who has made a state championship trip, in the split era. Looking to obviously get back. They're always highly competitive. The Blue Gators. I've never seen a Blue Gator, but I'd be scared, just as scared if it was green or blue. It wouldn't matter. And so, no, gonna be a great game in the Lake Charles area. Not a super long travel date, but should be a lot of fun.
The bottom of the bracket is one that I think as many eyes will be on in this bracket as in any other matchup. The 2-seeded Riverside Academy Rebels, the 7-seeded Ouachita Christian Eagles, two teams that have been in the Dome on multiple occasions recently, and as I mentioned at the beginning, get back to the quarters in really emphatic fashion. And I mean, I thought that 7-10 OCS Southern Lab matchup was as intriguing of a matchup as the second round held in this bracket, and 38-0 Eagles win at home in a matchup that, as we said last week, is often a hard-fought quarterfinal or semifinal type game. Instead, OCS shaking back from that Week 10 loss at Oak Grove and opening their playoff run in really impressive fashion. And so now we have two real heavy hitters at the bottom of this bracket.
Man, when the leaves turn brown, nobody wants to play OCS. You can say that about a couple of teams, obviously, throughout the state and throughout this bracket. But man, like, what a response from, like you said, we talked about making the most of the bye week when you get one. Obviously, the Eagles did that. I think everybody in the state, even if they've been living under a rock, knows how hard it is to go put the Kittens out of the playoffs, no matter what type of year that they had. And so Ouachita Christian be able to bounce back, like you said, from a pretty lopsided loss in Week 10, take advantage of the bye week, come out firing on all cylinders to set up, honestly, one of the funnest matchups maybe in the entire state for Thanksgiving week. You have a Riverside team that has been there and done it against a Ouachita Christian team that has done it a whole lot. And so two of the real just heavy hitters, the type of matchup you don't expect to usually even get at Thanksgiving. Like, this is a straight up, usually there's a roof over the head if these two teams are playing, like in the playoffs, you would assume. And so, getting this on Thanksgiving week, arguably, honestly, I'm a small school sucker. I can't help it. I went to a small school, but arguably maybe the best matchup in the state this week.
Believe this is the first time that actually I was looking at a wrong thing. I don't know when the last time these two teams met was. They were close to meeting in last year's semis, but Ascension Catholic got the best of its quarter against Riverside Academy, and so that's the one that we got last year. But this I agree is one of the more fun matchups around the state. I think a lot of folks will look at the winner of this game as probably their favorite to go win a state championship, despite some of the strength that is on the top half of this bracket and really all over the place. So looking forward to that one for sure. That was one that as I try and figure out where I'm going to be on Friday was quickly suggested to me to maybe consider that one, a small school matchup, but two fantastic small schools. Moving over to the non-select side as we kind of keep on rolling, the Division IV non-select bracket, Haynesville gets a 36-19 win in the rematch against Homer. 9 seed Jonesboro Hodge gets the best of Vinton, the 8 seed 39-33. And so we'll have a Haynesville versus Jonesboro Hodge matchup at the top in the quarterfinals. Logansport gets the best of Welsh late, 34-31 win for the 5 seed Logansport to advance. Jeanerette, huge 54-7 win against Grand Lake. So the 4 seed Tigers will head on to the quarterfinals. They will host Logansport this year in that quarterfinal. South Plaquemine 6-0 win against West St. Mary. Talk about a defensive battle for the reigning champ Hurricanes to advance. They'll host North Iberville, who got a 36-26 win against Elton. And in the bottom of the bracket, another low-scoring defensive battle, East Feliciana with a 12-8 win at home against Faraday. And so we don't get the District 2-2A rematch there that would have been with Faraday and Mangum. East Feliciana advances. Mangum, the 2 seed, takes care of business against West St. John, the 15 seed, 48-12 win for the Dragons. And so Mangum versus East Fel will be the bottom quarterfinal. Back up at the top, Haynesville beating Homer, now hosting Jonesboro Hodge. Jonesboro Hodge getting the slight upset, 9-8. And so Haynesville and Jonesboro Hodge, what stands out the top of the Division IV non-select bracket?
Obviously it's another district rematch. We've been talking about those, I feel like, for the last couple of weeks. Now, obviously, it was all Golden Tornado the first time. 43-0 win over Jay Hodge. Obviously, Jonesboro Hodge didn't get caught looking ahead. We talked last week about the potential of them possibly looking ahead to that second shot at the Golden Tornado. They go take care of business on the road at Vinton. But now it sets up a really tough matchup. Haynesville has been the standard bearer kind of in Division IV non-select for the last couple of years. Really one of the standard bearers, like we've said, through the state since football started being played in Louisiana. Now it's been a while, like we mentioned, since they last won it all, but they just seem so poised this year to at least get there. It's obviously not going to be easy. But you would expect Haynesville to go take care of business again. Obviously, Jonesboro Hodge is going to have some tricks up their sleeve, and they'll be obviously a little bit more prepared after seeing Haynesville once already. But it seems really tough to see anybody really slipping up the Golden Tornado at this point.
Yeah, they've been fantastic all year long. A ton of talent, always a really well-coached team, hard-nosed team, and they've got enough athletes at the right places for sure. That Homer matchup was the closest anyone has played them so far this year. And so I don't know how much to read into the dynamic there of, Homer having had a chance to see them and that kind of lessening the blow of seeing Haynesville for the first time, just with a little bit better sense of what to expect. And if that's something that can play to Jay Hodge's favor as well. Both of those games were really lopsided in the regular season. As you mentioned, Jonesboro Hodge had to survive a battle with Vinton there. And I know Dakota Knox and Landon Boston each had huge days on the ground for Jay Hodge. It'll be interesting to see if they can kind of carry some of that momentum up to Haynesville, because not a lot of people have had that type of success against them. And so good luck to them. But I think we agree Haynesville is a tough out for anybody in this bracket right now. Go ahead. Do you have more to add?
No, I'm good. Let's move on to 4-5.
Yeah, that 4-5 matchup, Jeanerette and Logansport. Jeanerette is in the quarterfinals now for the third straight year after having not been since 1990 until they got back a couple of years ago. And so credit to Coach CC Paul and company starting to make a routine of practicing on Thanksgiving weekend, or Thanksgiving week, getting ready for a Thanksgiving weekend game. This Logansport team, obviously, we talk about with Coach McGee and company up there. They're a deep playoff team pretty much year in and year out. They were in the semifinals last year, gave South Plaquemine its tightest game of the playoff run that the Hurricanes made. And so should be a fun one, and one that Jeanerette gets the benefit of being the home team and making Logansport take that long trip down south to them. when you look at these teams, how they got there, or what you're looking forward to Friday, what pops out?
Man, I talked last week about the job Kevin McGee does just every year at Logan Sport. Super impressive. Man, what an atmosphere Logan Sport is for a playoff game. I went out there when they played West St. John years back. I was home for Thanksgiving. I wasn't on a staff. We were playing that week, and I went out there and like it's basically there's no lights at all in that whole city except for the football stadium on a Friday night in November. It's pitch black, and then there's just this beam, and there's Logan Sport High. And Kevin McGee gets his guys ready for these playoff games, man, because he is not scared to go play whoever in non-district. I looked back, so we're in the second year of a 2-year contract cycle, so the non-district has been the same the last 2 years, but his seniors have played non-district games since they've been in high school against Loyola, Calvary, Peabody, Mansfield, Rose Pine, Manny. That they have gone up to 2A, 3A, 4A multiple times in the last 4 years, and it really pays off for them this time of year. They're going to have to travel down to Jeanerette, good ways from DeSoto Parish down to Jeanerette. Jeanerette, obviously, some super, super talented offensive playmakers. Went through a really tough district, lost that heartbreaker to Covenant Christian in overtime on a field goal. And now, Jeanerette's rolls through Grand Lake to set up an opportunity to host on Thanksgiving week. Really good matchup here of a team that's won a state championship in the split era against a team that hasn't won a state title. I don't think in their history, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. I don't want to be wrong here because I know how people are in the comments. No Jeanerette state titles. And so Jeanerette just keeps getting better and better. Lots of offensive talent. Run the ball extremely well. And so it's going to be a fun matchup. And obviously the benefit of the Jeanerette Tigers getting to be the home team.
I'm glad you mentioned the comments as well, because it just reminded me to make sure to check the comments a little bit more quickly this time. I forgot for a while last week. Yes, I was at that Ouachita Destrehan game on Friday, and it was a great one for Ouachita. We'll definitely be talking a lot about that here later on when we get to the Division I non-select bracket. But looking at the bottom half of this Division IV non-select, and I'll let you kind of take it whichever way you want. I guess I try and pick up speed a little bit, realizing that we're, a half an hour in here and still on some Division IVs. But South Plaquemine, 3 seed, 6 seed, North Iberville. North Iberville won a playoff game last year to get to the second round. Now they win a couple, push it another step farther into the quarters. So nice job for Coach Gast and company out there to get back to this point. And their reward is to go face the reigning state champions, and the job that Coach Feet and those guys do. And then, as I mentioned before, Mangum and East Fell is a 2-7 quarterfinal down at the bottom. As you look at the bottom half of Division IV non-select, what catches your eye most? And, can the Hurricanes get back through, or is someone else going to throw a curveball on that?
I mean, I think there's going to be plenty of curves thrown. But, man, we talk about the teams that have done it and the teams that are just kind of new on the scene or haven't really done it yet. Obviously, 3 and 6 is a clear example of that. North Iberville in their second year of full varsity football in the LHSAA, continue to just get better and better. But they're having to go, like I said, maybe the furthest team south in our state in South Plaquemine, and against a team who's a defending state champion, a team that's done it before. So it's going to be a tall task for the Bears, but Coach Joshua Gass is obviously going to have his guys ready to roll. And then at the second bottom of the half bracket, incredible job by Eastville to just keep on getting wins. Obviously, a tough Faraday team who's always a tough out. A nail biter there, 12-8. But Mangum and South Platte feel like they're just destined for each other in that semifinal. I don't think it's very cut and dry. I think the Bears and the Tigers will have something to say about it. But I would be a little surprised if we're not talking about Mangum South Platte in the semis next week.
Yeah, I was interested to see if Faraday could have gotten through to this point. That Faraday and Mangum matchup would have been a rematch of a close district game. And so that would have been kind of an interesting quarterfinal to me. But yeah, I agree that Mangum and South Plaquemine at home on Thanksgiving week, look like they would be the teams to beat, but have to get through some good teams to do so. Moving on to Division III Select, and also shout out to James Piker, who I don't know if you know him as Pickle, but I've known him as Pickle
man. James Piker.
since we were in high school, and so appreciate him stopping by, shouting us out a little bit. Looking at Division III Select, top seeded Lafayette Christian comes off of back-to-back off weeks because of the way that their week 10 game was canceled and then having the first round bye. They did not look rusty at all with a 57-10 win. Parkview Baptist. They advance against a Catholic New Iberia team, the reigning champs, 9 seed, that was one of just a few reigning champs to not have a bye to start this year's playoffs. And all they've done now is go win their 2 games by a combined 93-13, including a huge one against a good Bunkie team that was in this last week. And so now in that 3-3-7 area, Lafayette Christian Catholic New Iberia is going to be a monster of a small school matchup on Friday night. Another great one, 2 teams with some familiarity. Coaches obviously know each other very well. Dunham, the 5 seed, 62-3, the biggest margin of victory in the state this past week. They will now travel uptown to go face Isidore Newman. First-year coach Aaron Weiss. We talked some at the beginning of the playoffs. Those guys started a little bit slow this year and really hit their stride. Continue rolling this past week with a 42-13 win against Holy Savior Menard, and so get a home quarterfinal against Elijah Haven and company. Bottom half of the bracket, Jules Sumner, 42-20 win against Slaughter Community Charter to advance. They'll host your alma mater, Calvary Baptist, which got a 66-30 win against Country Day, that talented Cajuns team we've talked about the last couple of weeks. A 7-10 matchup that we thought would be a battle and was. Lafayette Renaissance Charter gets an 18-6 win against a meet to advance and will face, again, district rival, new district rival Notre Dame, the 2 seed, which got a 22-19 win over a tough 18 seed in De La Salle, 28-19. Notre Dame Pios advance and will be home against Lafayette Renaissance. But up top, let's start with that great one, Lafayette Christian, Catholic New Iberia, 2 teams getting there in dominant fashion and now sets up an awful lot of storylines.
Yeah, and I'm going to move quick. You and I, our shows could be 9 hours long if we wanted them to be. So Lafayette Christian has played 11 football games this year. They've only played 4 against teams in their own classification. Like, that's how much they went all over the place to schedule the best possible teams that they could. And all they did along the way was beat Rummel, Karen Crow, Westgate, and Central. A couple of those teams are still playing this week. They lose to a really good Shaw team. Their closest game against a 2A opponent was against LRCA, and they won by 41 points. That's their closest game against a actual opponent in their classification. So they just seem like an unstoppable force this year. But you don't want to ever run into the Catholic New Iberia Panthers in the playoffs. I've coached against them a couple of times. They were a thorn in Calvary's side for what seemed like, a 5 or 6 year period there in the 2013 to 2020 range. It seemed like they were always at each other's throats. I think they had about 4 playoff matchups.
And again last year, derailed a promising Calvary run.
Yeah. So that's going to be a great one. Obviously, just another test for the LCA Knights. In the second matchup, like you said, 2 coaches that literally just had their entire life built in the Baton Rouge area. Aaron Weiss, a Redemptress alum, who's also was the head coach at Redemptress. He was the OC at Central. He was the OC at U High. He's been all over every basically school in Baton Rouge. Neil Weiner, who's a Catholic alum, former head coach at Zachary, former head coach, obviously the current head coach at Dunham, who just keeps doing incredible things with the Tigers. This is a really fun matchup of 2 teams that are obviously, more about Dunham's quarterback, but obviously Newman is still talented at the quarterback position, even with Arch Manning gone. It seems like they always got a quarterback, even if he's not a Manning. It seems like they always have a good quarterback. And so that's a really fun matchup. Newman is a fun atmosphere. I know you've been there. I've been there for a playoff game before. One-sided stadium, the beautiful campus they have is the backdrop on the visitor side. And so it's a great atmosphere. And so that's going to be a really fun matchup. That's a hump Newman is continuing to work to get over, to get to semis and beyond. Dunham the last couple of years has made a couple of state championship trips where they've fallen short. And then at the bottom half of the bracket, like you said, my alma mater getting a big 60. Honestly, a result that kind of surprised me. You and I had talked about them in Country Day, maybe being a little bit tighter. And I know it was a little bit early. And then that second quarter, Calvary just exploded. And ended up having a huge halftime lead. So great response after the bye week by the Cavaliers. Now they go up against a Jules Sumner team. Calvary has been there a ton, especially since the split era. Sumner, not so much. All right. And so this is a matchup where Sumner's the home team. I've mentioned before how cool their stadium layout is, how it's basically like down in a big bowl. And so it's a really cool atmosphere. Playing against a team that has done it a lot more than they have as far as the long playoff runs. Calvary, multiple state championships in the split era, have only been playing varsity football, people forget, since 2005. So they're barely a 20-year-old school when you compare them to some of these public schools that have been around for like 100 years. So Calvary's still relatively new when you compare them to other schools, but a ton of history, lots of good-looking alums. All over the place. Not myself, but there's others. And then at the last game at the bottom of the bracket, a rematch from a tough district, Notre Dame, Lafayette Renaissance. The Pioneers get the win 38-19 back in on Halloween night. And so obviously beating Trev Falk twice in 1 year, not really an easy thing to do. But the guy for the job is probably Louis Cook, who's won more games than I've probably ever even watched in my life.
Yeah.
And so that's a tremendous matchup. This bracket is absolutely loaded with fun matchups. There's not a bad one. You could put the four of these in a hat, Jarrett, and just pick one to go to, and you wouldn't make a bad call. And so you're looking at four potentially really, really fun matchups for those four coveted semifinal spots.
Yeah, great slate overall. You hit on, a lot of that. You mentioned Newman always has a quarterback. They have a quarterback not only even when it's not a Manning, they have a quarterback even when it's not a quarterback. They've got Jake Randall, the running back, who's been at quarterback this year and has done a fantastic job there, getting those guys rolling. And I had a chance to see him in that first start at St. Charles Catholic, where it's just going to be tough sledding for anybody this year. And I thought Jake made some plays downfield with his arm on top of what he brought in kind of a read option game with his legs. And so credit to Jake for that role, as well as to Coach Weiss and company for kind of figuring out how to best attack what they had personnel wise, and make the most of it to be a 4 seed and hosting a game the day after Thanksgiving. Jules Sumner, you mentioned, doesn't have the recent playoff history of Calvary Baptist. They were in the quarters last year and fell short in a tight one. I'm not sure when the last time they were in the semis were. I have to continue going back and finding that one, but they get a chance at home to try and continue what has been a bit of a dream season, if possible. But the challenge that's there in Calvary is a tall one. And those type of matchups, I always love when you have a team that's trying to kind of get over a hump, as you said, or kind of push things, and they have to go through a more established presence to sort of to be the man, you got to beat the man type of energy, whether it be, getting to state championships or just getting to that next hump, our next hurdle, next stage as a program. Moving on to the Division III non-select bracket, top seeded Gina with a 48-14 win over St. Helena. Mansfield, the 8th seed, with a 62-60 win against Marksville in that game that we were looking forward to and maybe even exceeded some of our expectations to be a 62-60 final, but Mansfield moves on and will visit Gina. Erath, the 5 seed, one of the 10 undefeated teams in the playoffs, no longer undefeated. Union Parish, a team that down in a lot of folks' minds by Union Parish standards, a 5-5 regular season, only had one game that they won that was against a team that had a winning record. A 12th seed was the lowest that they've had in a few years. All that be damned, Coach Spat and company go down to Erath and get a 14-9 win against a previous undefeated Bobcats team. They advance to face Kinder, another undefeated team there, which got a 40-27 win against Kaplan. Bottom half of that bracket, shout out to my man TC down there in St. James Parish. Oak Grove, the 6th seed, will visit beautiful downtown Vacherie and St. James this week. St. James, a 3 seed with a 53-13 win over Manny. Oak Grove, the 6 seed, a 42-0 win over Richwood. And so that'll be another great one the day after Thanksgiving. Lauraville with a 42-39 survival of Church Point, a 7-10 game. They now have to take the long trip up north to Sterlington, which hung 71 on Donaldsonville in a 71-26 win against the 15th seeded Tigers, who we talked so much about how stout they were defensively and all those things last week. Sterlington, we mentioned starting the playoffs. I believe we mentioned either we talked about the dynamic with Sterlington, or I mentioned on kind of the bracket predictions episode for this that folks in the Monroe area said they thought the Panthers were further ahead at this time of year than they were last year starting their title run. And my goodness, did they look exactly that part in that second round game. But starting up top, Gina, the 1 seed, Mansfield, the 8 seed, and 4th seeded Kinder now get a chance to host Union Parish. What do you think about the top half of D3 non-select?
Well, one, Gina did what we expect him to do, not to overlook the job that Jay Rourke continues to do at Gina, which I've highlighted every week so far that we've done this show. They go take care of business and do what they're supposed to do, and they are continuing to take that program to new heights and just continue to get better and better, looking to make a playoff run that is worthy of how good they were in the regular season with being that 1 seed. When I saw the Mansfield-Marksville score, I was looking to see how many rebounds and assists some of those kids have because I didn't think it was a football game. Terrell Pegues, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, it's because I'm from Shreveport and I apologize. Terrell Pegues carries the ball for 185 yards, 2 touchdowns. He got 9.3 yards per carry to kind of lead the way for the Wolverines in a game that was just absolutely just dominated on the ground by Mansfield, despite the obviously the close score. I mean, 379 team rushing yards for Mansfield in this game. Just an unbelievable effort on the ground by the Wolverines to win a shootout. Obviously, got their hands full with Gina, but we've seen that Mansfield can score a lot of points, and they're not going to back down. They are looking – it's been a while for the Mansfield Wolverines. If I'm not mistaken, I think that their lone state title came in 1991. Yes, 1991. I don't know why I remember that. Probably because when I was a kid, when we played them a lot, they had it big painted on their locker room. Like, it was huge. And so it was kind of just drilled in my brain. So that's going to be a fun matchup. And, the teams of Division II non-select have to keep looking at Spat and the Farmers like they can't keep getting away with this. Like, hey, we get them the 12 seed. They don't have a year that they're typically used to having, and they still make it to Thanksgiving week. Kinder obviously handles business against a pretty underrated Kaplan team. If you look at, away from the 20 seed, Kaplan had some good moments this year. They had a big win over Southern Lab. Kaplan gives Kinder some trouble. It ends up being a 2-score game, but now Kinder's back home again, hosting the Farmers, a game that under the old system, Union would have earned a home game, which would have been typical for them on Thanksgiving week, but they have to travel again down to Kinder, long trip down from Farmerville. That's going to be a really exciting matchup. Spats, we talk a lot about these teams like Cecilia Opelousas, Southern Lab, Union Parish that they're the 12 seed. Yeah, it doesn't matter. When the playoffs start, we've seen all of those schools and others just make these deep runs and kind of just be who they are whenever the mindset of November shifts. At the bottom half of the bracket, I've talked to a buddy of mine, Jonathan Bauman, who's on the staff at St. James. Me and him have talked a ton this week. He's a good friend of mine. He's been super good to me over the years. He was nothing but complimentary of the Manny Tigers and super complimentary of the Oak Grove Tigers. He said that they show some different looks that they haven't really shown a lot in recent years, like a little bit more spread out on offense. Yeah. But still said that they are very capable of getting under center when they need to and loading it up and being Oak Grove. So very, very complimentary. So that the respect factor is strong in this game on both staffs for both teams. 2 of the standards. We've talked about, you and I, a lot about the teams that are the standards in Louisiana, and their classification doesn't matter. Like if you were to hey, these are the top 15 programs in the state of Louisiana and throw out the classes, Oak Grove and St. James are probably on that list, just year in, year out of just best programs. And so that is probably the most fun matchup, like just right away in this division. But that Sterlington Laurelville matchup is also super fun. Laurelville is having an incredible season. They got that huge win in district against that team that they refer to as the Red School, which is Catholic New Iberia. I can say it for them. Even their social media, literally the score graphic said the Red School in Laurelville. Like, so some Ohio State, Michigan like vibes with that one. But Laurelville, great season, big win over the Panthers, team that's obviously playing on Thanksgiving week. Now they have to travel up to that beautiful new facility in Sterlington, take on Lee Dottie and the boys who, they get in the I formation. Their fullback is about a yard behind the quarterback, and their tailback is 9 yards behind that. And they ride the fullback dive. They'll pull it and pitch it once you think you've got it figured out. I have seen them over the years just go and continue to win games that people, when they write them off, it always seems to be a mistake when you don't have faith in the Panthers. I saw them go to the Dome in 2016 against a Madison Prep team that had NFL players on it and move the ball at will against the Chargers. Obviously, that's a long time ago, but I think it just shows the anybody, anytime, any place type mentality that Lee Dottie has. We've seen him go up in classification multiple times in the last couple of years. They've played Ouachita Parish. I want to say that they played West Monroe maybe like in the Jamboree or something along those lines. They played, I'm pretty sure Ash maybe in a scrimmage to start the year, if I'm not mistaken. And so
I think so.
The Panthers are just a standard. Again, we just keep talking about these small schools that when you chalk up their resumes and what they can do even against the bigger schools, like they just belong. And so that's going to be a tough one for Laurelville. Obviously, they're having a great season. They are well capable of going on the road and getting a playoff win. But the bottom half of the bracket, that semifinal matchup, no matter who's there, is going to be a lot of fun.
Sterlington has 2 losses this season, and they are to Division I non-select quarterfinalists Ouachita Parish and Neville by a combined 18 points. 18 points, and got a big win against a second-round D1 select team in Tioga. That they won that one to start the season, and so just kind of further illustrating your point.
Anytime, any place. I guarantee if you ask Lee Dottie the same thing, he'll probably echo me on that one.
No doubt. And so that's D3 non-select, some great matchups up and down that bracket. Moving up to Division II select. This is, as I mentioned at the beginning, the one bracket where all 8 top seeds have advanced. St. Charles Catholic, the number 1 seed, 56-7 win against Northside. E.D. White, the 8th seed, with a 35-7 win against 9th seeded St. Michael the Archangel. And so that'll be a hard-hitting defensive and run game type battle between St. Charles and E.D. White down there in Laplace on Friday. The Battle of Baton Rouge in that 3A district there, U High and Madison Prep will meet again in a rematch of a 1-score game on that same field just a few weeks ago. Madison Prep with a 42-26 win against John F. Kennedy out of New Orleans to get there. U High with a 50-16 win against Booker T. Washington Shreveport to get there. Bottom half of the bracket, Lake Charles College Prep, the 3 seed, takes care of Leesville 42-23 to advance and will host 6-seeded Vanderbilt Catholic, which got a 49-24 win against George Washington Carver. And Archbishop Shaw, 49-6 win for the reigning champs over 10th seeded Haynesville Academy. They will now head up to 2nd seeded Loyola Prep, which shut out Bel Air 42-0. This is the first time, I need to double check. I'd pulled it up earlier, but the first time in a while that Loyola Prep has been to the quarters, and they have the benefit of being the home team against a team that's making a long trip up to them the day after Thanksgiving. And so will be really interesting to see how that one plays out. But for you from the top with St. Charles and E.D. White.
Wayne Stein and the boys just keep doing their thing. This is one of the better Comets teams that we've seen in the last couple of years. And that's saying something because there's always a good Comets team. And so them being just poised, it seems like, to just run the table. just is obviously just kind of what they do. And what's crazy about like, there could be a lot of bitterness, with like the teams that are always at the top. But like when you talk to coaches around the state, have you ever heard an opposing coach say anything bad about Wayne Stein? Because
No,
I haven't.
he's the best.
Yeah, hell of a baseball coach too. People seem to forget that nowadays. And so, Wayne Stein just keeping the Comets rolling. Edie White, gets a big win in the 8-9 matchup over St. Michael. Great season for the Warriors. Ran into obviously a buzzsaw, a team in the Cardinals that just run the ball so well. And so that's a really fun matchup. Obviously, Edie White has to go not super far to St. Charles, but man, that's a tough place to go win a football game. They do not lose a lot when they're at home, and that's going to be a tough one. The second matchup at the top of the bracket, one of the better district rematches that we get in the playoffs. The last two district champions facing off in the quarterfinals, a game that was decided by a 75-yard pick six, back in the regular season. So my mom makes the trip down a couple of times a year to watch, my little nephew, my large nephew, the nose guard for the U-High Cubs. Shout out to 57, Jackson Hester. He'll probably hate the fact that I talked about him on the internet, but so she comes down a few times a year to watch him play. And I remember getting a text during our game that week that simply just said, Madison Prep is the biggest team I've ever seen. Like she was at all. Just how the Chargers are huge up front, man. Obviously they're always known for how athletic they are, but they are not a lot of teams in Division II can match up with U-High's size up front, but the Chargers can. Obviously Lamar Brown is the biggest person I think I've ever seen in a football uniform, but still, the Chargers can match up with them up front. I think this is going to come down to just who's the more disciplined team for 4 quarters. Who can hang on to the football, who's not going to make the mistake in special teams. This is the kind of game that can be totally swung by a blocked kick, maybe a missed extra point, a surprise onside. Like these are the types of games where no team has a huge advantage if you look across the board. Like you could argue offense, defense, and special teams for all 3 teams and argue who's got the better one. It's not like a clear winner in any category. And so this is the kind of game that's going to be decided by who makes the least amount of mistakes. In the Baton Rouge area over at the Cub Complex in the shadow of Alex Box, they're in for a treat with this one because this has been a hell of a game the last couple of years and should be no different this week. Lake Charles Prep and Vanderbilt, the Trailblazers kind of had a couple of just great results this year against really good competition. They lose a 1-touchdown game to open the season against a second-round Westgate team. They win a basketball score against Barb. They get a big win over Opelousas, who made another couple of, playoff win runs. They get a win over a Mansfield team that's still playing. They have a 1-score loss to Catholic of New Iberia, who's still playing. And now they're facing a Vanderbilt Catholic team who had their kind of big marquee win earlier in the year with a 14-3 result over a lesser team that's still playing in a district matchup. And so, Brian Wallace has done a really good job at Vanderbilt in his short time there. So this one should be a really fun matchup. And then at the bottom of the bracket, like you said, Archbishop Shaw, the defending champ, going on the road all the way to Shreveport. You don't see a lot of New Orleans going to Shreveport in the playoffs. Usually those Shreveport schools that make it, they got to make the trip. And so the Fighting Snoopies are, in a position to be hosting a quarterfinal, like you said, for the first time in probably a long time.
2008 is the last time they were in the quarterfinals, and they're trying to get to the semis for the first time since 1998. I had a chance to go back through where I had texted it and double check that.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. If their offense can kind of get going the way it did against like that result against North Dakota, the 1 seed in Division II non-select, they lose 63-49. But their ability to just kind of basically match the Griffins point for point. Obviously, North Dakota gets the win there. But they've shown that their offense can be super high flying. Now, if they get in a situation where they give up 63 to Shaw, it may not go their way. But this is going to be a really good matchup, and it's an awesome moment for the Flyers, to kind of just be where they're at right now when they haven't been in the situation, like you said, in many, many years against a team that is the defending champion. So a tall task for the Flyers at Mesmer Stadium this week.
One of those matchups, like I mentioned, in one of the other divisions, of just sort of the cool nature of a team that's trying to kind of push and do something new or new for this generation of kids to get to a point they have not seen the program be, versus an established power like a reigning champion in Shaw. And this one also has such an interesting clash of styles with that high scoring Loyola Prep offense versus the tough Shaw defense. It's not quite the same Shaw team it was last year in a lot of ways when you graduate guys heading off to Michigan and whatnot. Just big shoes to fill, but this year's group has shown that they are very capable and they have a lot of talent on that defensive side in particular. So this is, again, the only bracket where the top 8 seeds all advanced, and there are some great matchups all over the state, pretty much every corner of the state in this one. And so folks will have an opportunity to go see some great D2 select football on Friday night. D2 non-select, moving over to that side of things. And we can kind of start to slow them down a little bit now too, as we get to places where more of the chaos has happened, and where some of these games are some of the real marquee matchups around the state. But that number 1 seeded North DeSoto Griffins team that we just talked about, the district rival of Loyola Prep, 56-13 win over DeRidder. They advanced to face 8th seeded Franklinton, the runners-up a year ago. North DeSoto, obviously the runners-up 3 years ago. Two teams that have dome aspirations once again. Franklinton in the 8-9 matchup beat Jennings 40-14, and so both teams with emphatic wins in the second round and bring some momentum here up to Griffin Stadium up there in the quarterfinals. Plaquemine gets a 54-14 win over Wassman to advance and will host for the second straight playoffs Cecilia, who as a double-digit seed for the second straight playoffs is playing on Thanksgiving weekend after going out to Lakeshore, a team that I know folks out there on the North Shore said was going to be a really tough out. Coach Indest and company doing a great job out there with the Titans, but Cecilia went out there, battled them back and forth, was able to pull away a little bit late and win 54-42. Second straight game over 50 points for the Bulldogs. So despite Diesel being off at Coffeyville and Brent Gordon being at UL and Ella Stewart being up at UAPB, I believe, and some of those graduations, this new look Bulldogs team is putting up an awful lot of points, and will head to Plaquemine, who they faced last year in the semis, I believe, to head on to the Dome. Belle Chase, the opposite end of the point scoring spectrum, gets a 7-6 win against Opelousas in a defensive select fest. Cardinals advance and will host our buddy Terry Minor and West Feliciana, which, as we had told folks to kind of keep an eye on, a district rematch last week against Bruley. This time, Westfell is able to get the best of it in another close one, 27-24 to advance. They'll now head down to Belle Chase. A 42-41 Lutcher survival of Franklin Parish up there in Winsboro to end the run for a fantastic Franklin Parish group. That Lutcher team that graduated a ton from last year seems like it's kind of coming into its own now at the right time of year under Coach Dwayne Jenkins and company. They'll head west this time to Iowa, which got a 68-28 defeat of Northwest, the 15 seed. So starting up top of the quarterfinals, North DeSoto versus Franklinton, two of the best senior quarterbacks in the state, two coaches that have been around and done it at a high level for a really long time. What's it going to look like on Friday night with these two guys?
Man, obviously, that I have so much love for Dennis Dunn. A guy that I've known my entire life. Just as good of a lot of people don't know this, just as good of a pastor as he's a football coach. If you've never heard him give a sermon, you need to check it out. And so two teams that have been to the state championship in recent years, and both teams fell short when they got there. North DeSoto falls short in 2022 to a lunch-led Lutcher team, and we see right now what Lutch is doing on Saturdays, so there's obviously no shame in that. And so Franklinton last year has a great run under Coach Salt and end up falling short to that, like you said, that Diesel-led Cecilia team that kind of come out of nowhere, but nobody was shocked that actually coaches in that bracket. And so obviously this is a really fun matchup. Franklinton's got to make the long trip up to a great facility at DeSoto Parish. The North DeSoto Griffins got their marquee win way back early in the season against West Monroe on the road against West Monroe, which is obviously not a lot of no Northwest Louisiana team has gone to West Monroe and won that wasn't named Evangel or Calvary in like over 20 years. Like I'm pretty confident in that statistic because when we did it at Calvary in 2014, nobody had done it since like 03 Evangel. And so teams from Northwest Louisiana don't go over to West Monroe that often and win. And the Griffins did that. And so obviously that's going to be a great matchup. The second matchup there, Coach Donald Williams, I've been singing his praises for 2 weeks. Plaquemine just marches on, outscored opponents, 109-14 so far in the playoffs. And now they run into a Cecilia team that lost their best player to graduation. They lost their coach to another job, and they're still playing on Thanksgiving. I mean, that's the difference, Jarrett, between people always ask, like, what makes these programs different. I believe that there's schools that have football teams, and then there's programs. Yeah. And there's a lot of schools in Louisiana that have a football team, but there are really not that many programs. And Cecilia is proving that they are a football program. Like their ability to best player gone, new coach, we're still playing on Thanksgiving. All right. And we get a blowout in week 1. We put up 54 points in week 2 on the road against a really good Lakeshore team that Brett Indest is consistently taking on deep playoff runs. And so this is a really fun matchup, at the top half of the bracket. Cecilia and Plaquemine, teams that aren't super far apart travel-wise, that should be a lot of fun. If you look at the bottom half, Belle Chase survives, another one of those teams in Opelousas that doesn't matter what their seed is. You can kind of throw it out when the playoffs start. A nail-biter down there at Belle Chase. And so with the West Feliciana game, man, just like a little shout-out to 2 people, Terry Miner, the head coach, and Trey Rogers, the kicker. All right, so, Trey Rogers comes to me as a freshman. Me and Dane Denham, who's a soccer coach in St. Charles Parish now, he and I worked with the specialist at Westphal. Trey Rogers, if you've ever seen him, does not look like a kicker. All right, he looks like a center. All right, but he assured us that he was a kicker, and so we were like, all right, man, do your thing. I've seen the output and the work he's put in to change the narrative that people have about him when they see him into seeing just one of the most consistent, good kickers in Division II. All right. And so Bruley goes up 24-7, which that seems to happen every time Westphal and Bruley play. All right. Going back to my first year at Westphal in 2020, Bruley jumps out to these huge leads and Westphal claws back. All right. The game there's 1 second left. It's 24-all. Trey Rogers misses an extra point. Misses a field goal at the buzzer to win the game. The game goes to overtime. And the reason I shout out Terry Miner is not because they won, but because he sent Trey back out to win the game. Like a lot of high school coaches, man, would have been, no, we're going to leave the offense on the field and we'll take our chances. No, he looked his kid in the eye. I know how Terry is. Nobody is a bigger believer in kids than Terry Miner. And so for his ability, I don't know if Terry even realizes what he did for Trey for the next 10 years of Trey's life. For somebody to look him in the eyes, and honestly, one of the most stressful moments I'm sure Trey's ever had, and to say, you got this, you're going to go win us this ball game, and then he absolutely drills it. And I don't know if you saw the highlight on Sportsline, but ran the length of the field with his whole team chasing him. Those are the moments that this whole thing is built for, and so shout out to both of those guys. Really great, really fun matchup between Westphal and Belle Chase. Those last 2 games, when I sent you my predictions, I don't know if you remember what I put in parentheses by Franklin Parish Lutcher. I put game of the weekend. I knew in advance. I said, this is going to be the best game. It ends up being 42-41. The Lutcher Bulldogs overcome a regular season that honestly is a little below their standards. All right. They lose week 1 to a very improved Slidell team. They get blanked by St. Charles Catholic, who's the 1 seed in Division III Select. They beat a much improved Liberty team. They lose by 10 to E.D. White. They are going to obviously handle business against an Iota team, and then the game of the weekend against Franklin Parish. The ability to come out 1 point ahead in a matchup like that is super impressive. The game could have gone either way. You could have told me it was 42-41 Franklin, right, or the result we got 42-41 Lutcher, and I would have been like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like I knew this was going to be an instant classic. And they're facing a team in Iowa that we've mentioned a few teams like this, man. Iowa is desperately trying to get over the hump. They are trying to get past Thanksgiving. All right. They've had some incredibly talented teams. I coached against one in 2021. They came to us at Westphal as the 7 seed. We got the best of them as the 20 in a really, really fun game. Had a receiver that you'll remember that went to Purdue. You'll probably remember the name.
Curtis DeVille.
Right. Stud.
Yeah.
And so we get, but Iowa is a team that is just so good, so consistent, looking to get over the hump. Super fun matchup there against one of the teams that's just done it almost better than anybody, especially in this division in Lutcher. And so, some of the familiar faces here, a couple of new ones, but just, a great set of 4 games overall.
Yeah, that Iowa team, Coach Tommy Johns has done a great job with them of being in this position year in and year out. And they've gotten to the semis a couple of times, but have looked year in and year out like it may be the year they can make that dome run and haven't quite had a chance to do so. Now, the road on the bottom half of that bracket runs through Iowa, but they've got to deal with a Lutcher team that, again, is coming together at the right time. A lot of new faces this year at, quarterback and skill positions and whatnot. But is to go up to Winsboro and beat this Franklin Parish team on their home turf at this time of year, I think says a lot about Lutcher just kind of maturing and finding its way here. Love a lot of this bracket. It has a little bit of everything. That Cecilia Plaquemine game is going to be wild. That's another one where, as much as we talk about Cecilia and the graduations that they had to overcome in terms of roster turnover, Plaquemine had a lot of that defense back with Roderick Bingham and company on that side of the ball, but had to replace a great quarterback running back duo, and Brennan Miles and Spencer Collins and company have done really well finding their way this season to put up 54 points in their own right this past week. And so that's another of many that's on my list of potential options to go cover in person on Friday night. Will be another real fun one. Getting up to Division I now. Division I select Edna Carr 39-13 win over Jesuit. Evangel Christian 34-14 win over St. Paul's in the 8-9 game. And so we get the quarterfinal matchup that will dominate social media as much as any other game around the state, with that loaded Edna Carr Cougars team against Pop Houston and the high-flying Evangel Christian Eagles. That one will be down in Algiers on Friday. 5th seeded Alexandria, 38-27 win over Brother Martin, the 12 seed. They advance to face you guys, Catholic Baton Rouge. We talked a little bit about that game early on, but Catholic with a 37-14 win at Brex Memorial Stadium, where they'll be home next week where you guys will be home next week to host Alexandria, the team who made it to the Superdome last year. Bottom half of that bracket, St. Aug survives what was a crazy one for a while there against Acadiana, 55-42 final for the Purple Knights to pull it out down the stretch. And so they'll be home again in Tad Gormley Stadium next week against Archbishop Rummel, who went up to Tioga as an 11 seed and got a 45-21 upset. This will be a rematch of a game that I covered just a few weeks back at Joe Yenny Stadium. St. Aug got that one 24 or 26-3 maybe against Rummel, and will be a rematch here in the quarterfinals. John Curtis Christian with a nice statement win, an emphatic 49-7 victory against 10th seeded St. Thomas More, advancing to the quarters to face STM's district rival Turlings Catholic, who got a 55-22 win over Bonneville. And so Coach Mikey Corville and company keeping that undefeated Rebel train rolling on to the quarters. Let's go one by one with these things. Edna Carr and Evangel, how these teams got there. Impressive fashion. Not really a lot of doubts in those second round games, but what does this matchup hold now as we get the Cougars versus the Eagles?
Man, I think it's got the most. I think it's the most like you can talk about is from a recruiting standpoint, maybe of any matchup in the bracket. Obviously, Pop Houston, who's an early LSU commit, in that class of 2027. And then you're looking at across the line from him, you're looking at Richard Anderson, who's the LSU commit, the defensive lineman for Carr, who is one of the flat out best football players I have ever personally laid eyes on in person. I know that sounds weird personally in person, but, obviously you can watch film, but as well as I do, until you watch them play with your own eyes, man, it doesn't really tell the story. But Richard Anderson, just a hell of a football player. Like I said, LSU commit. His teammate Aiden Hall in the back, obviously another LSU commit at safety. And then out at corner, Hayward Howard Jr., who's a Texas commit. Would have been really cool to have 3 for 3 LSU. Maybe the new coach can get on that. But Lane Kiffin, come on, man. Obviously studs on that Carr defense, just absolutely loaded. There's no defense like it in the state as far as just the name value. You've got 3 of the top 11 players according to 24/7 in the state, and they all fit the bill. They are all worthy of how they're ranked, and so it's going to really come down to, can Evangel give Pop time to throw? Because we've seen these Evangel receivers will find space. Like, it's not like even as good as Carr's secondary is, that you can't cover everybody at once, and so you assume Denny Duran and company will have some guys schemed open, but it's really going to come down to just will he be able to make plays from the pocket. Evangel, it's not a good recipe for them to want him to constantly have to be moving to make plays. Like, he's got to be able to make plays from the pocket. And that's going to be really tough, obviously, with Richard Anderson up front. And he's obviously not the only D lineman on Carr's team that's a really good player. But obviously, he's the name value. And so that's going to be kind of, I think, the tail of the tape there in that one is Pop going to have time to find his open guys? And then in that second game, go ahead.
Oh, we get the eyeball emojis from Josh Preston, who I'm imagining will probably be in Algiers on Friday, and the numbers of traffic that Josh Preston's video vault does coming out of that one may just feed the Preston family for the rest of this year, because I imagine it'll be pretty wild. And I agree with you. Just can Pop have enough time to do Pop things against a defense that is just college talent everywhere? Because you have those 3 headliners, but then the entire secondary is D1 FBS commits. There are other D1 commits all over that defensive front at the linebacker position. Romeo Brown has been great. Kevin Martin has been great. Just, talent all over the place. Juelz Batiste, a guy that, folks are figuring out now. He's a junior, but he's a guy that has SEC offers. And so Pop may need every one of those 9 yards of shotgun space at times, and will still be, having Big Rich and company kind of breathing down his neck. But on to that 4-5 matchup, man, Catholic and Alexandria.
Yeah, so like you said, both teams coming off, wins against teams from obviously opposite sides of the state from them, but both got to be at home. Another coach that I have just the utmost love and respect for. We talk about Dennis Dunn, Thomas Bachman, another guy that I've literally known my whole life. I watched that dude play high school football, and there have not been many better wide receivers come out of Louisiana than Thomas Bachman. I exist as Coach Chance Hester because of the Bachman family. If John Bachman Sr. doesn't give me an opportunity to basically wash laundry and break down film at Calvary, then I'm not sitting on this YouTube video with you right now.
Which is funny. I don't know if you remember this, but at some point I saw Coach Bachman somewhere, and I texted you something about, oh yeah, like saw your dad, and you're like, what? Like, what do you mean you like? No, you didn't. And I was like, oh, my bad. I'm just like screwing up Hester Bachman things now.
He might as well be. I'll fight for that dude. And so, Thomas Bachman's done such a good job at Ash consistently, year by year, taking that program to new heights, makes the dome trip last year, runs into a buzzsaw of Edna Carr, obviously, who didn't take it easy on anybody the whole season, and they're doing a lot of that still. But Catholic gets the win over a really scrappy Captain Shreve team. This one should be a lot of fun. Two teams that don't get to see each other very often. Obviously, Ash is kind of a newer select team with the open enrollment in Repeats Parish. Catholic's been in select since the beginning. Last week was the first ever meeting in school history between Shreve and Catholic. And so you assume that Catholic and Ash probably the same story. And if they have met before, it sure ain't often. I'll find out and let you know if this is a first time matchup. But on the bottom half of the bracket, man, St. Aug and Rummel, Catholic League rematch. You see a lot more of those. Like you said, before the select brackets expanded, you'd see a lot of those Catholic League quarters and semis of teams that had played already that year. But here you get a quarterfinal matchup in an expanded Division One, a game that Aug won 26-3 back in mid-October. And so, obviously, you don't want to play a team like Rummel twice, and I'm sure the Purple Knights and Coach Valdez are well aware of that. So that's going to be a fun one at Tad Gormley. And then at the bottom half, John Curtis does something to STM that no one does to STM. I don't care what classification you're in. I don't care if they're playing up or down. Like, STM don't get beat 49-7 by anybody. All right. And so just a wildly impressive result for the Patriots. Mikey Corville, those pesky Bonneville Bruins went up there and kind of gave the Rebels a little bit of trouble early. And then the really talented Rebels team pulls away under Coach Mikey Corville, who you and I both love. All right. And so another coach that we both love, JT Curtis. So that's a fun matchup. A guy who is looking to put his stamp, a guy Mikey Corville looking to put his stamp on his alma mater as a program versus a guy who has run out of stamps almost to put on his program in JT Curtis. And so this is a great opportunity for Coach Corville and the Rebels, obviously, to host this game, especially. John Curtis doesn't travel a lot in the quarterfinals. Usually they're at the Shrine or Gormley or somewhere like that, usually this time of year. But they're going to make the trip to Lafayette. Great opportunity for the Rebels. It should be a fun matchup. An offense that the Rebels haven't seen this year, so it's going to be really key for them to have a great week of practice over Thanksgiving break. To kind of the Turling Scout offense might be the most important unit in this whole bracket this week as far as practice goes. Division One is Division One when you get to this time of the year, and you could talk for a half hour about each game. So it's going to be a great one.
Looking at that Turlings and John Curtis matchup and kind of moving back up from it, this is a rematch of a quarterfinal last year that is, as much as you mentioned, Curtis historically isn't traveling a whole hell of a lot because they're usually one of the highest seeded teams. This year's team, after going through some of the lumps they went through last year and then going on that deep playoff run, a lot of these guys have been through a lot of road playoff games because of last year being kind of an anomaly. And one of those trips was to Turlings Catholic last year. And so between that and then early this season went on the road all the way out to California to face a Cathedral out there in an early season game. They're not going to be a group that is shocked by anything or surprised or shies away from getting on the road and taking a trip. And so they'll go to Turlings ready to roll, I'm sure. And Turlings will be ready to host them and happy that it's at their place. I know stopping out there last week, a lot of those guys were thrilled to be opening the playoffs at home against Bonneville. And so now they get that benefit to be on that same exact field this Friday. That St. Aug Rummel game, last time they played, again, I was at that one on a Saturday night a few weeks back. Aug just gave Rummel's tackles trouble and kind of disrupted a lot of their offense, and it turned into some short fields for St. Aug that they were able to capitalize on. I think Rummel probably in some ways felt like that game should have been closer. I think St. Aug in some ways probably felt like they should have won more handily if some moments and calls and things hadn't gone against them. And so it'll be interesting to see how exactly the complexion of that one kind of shakes up this time around now, as two great coaches, two great coaching staffs have an opportunity to get those guys ready for a rematch. And not a ton specifically to say matchup wise of Catholic and Ash, but I know for folks here in Baton Rouge that as much as I kind of harp on the depth of y'all's running back stable there with Jaden Miles and Justin Batiste and on down the line with, 4 or 5 guys y'all feel great about. Alexandria graduated JT Lindsay last year and has 2 of the best 2028 running backs in the state with Kason Williams and Noble Williams, who Easton Royal from Brother Martin had himself a night for Brother Martin in the second round. But Kason, in terms of just stats and highlight reel stuff, outdid Easton a little bit with a 4 touchdown game of his own, coming back from injury, and had like 200 some odd yards and 4 touchdowns. And so you might have a handful of the best 2027 and 2028 running backs in the state between those 2 teams on the same field Friday night.
So those down the line guys, by the way, just for their own love, would be 2027 Lamont Robinson and 2028 Greg Williams. All right, so I love, I'll steal the opportunity to shout. I don't shout out Catholic a ton on here, but I'll shout those guys out. So, great running back matchup. 2 teams that obviously run the ball really, really well. 2 teams that have underrated quarterback play. Quarterbacks for both teams are not to be undersold by how good their run games are. And so, 2 really good Catholic High plays 2 quarterbacks, obviously, and then the quarterback for Ash, obviously are all having really good seasons, and not to be understated, by how good the run game is for both of their teams.
Yep, and great defenses on both sides as well. That's a great matchup. I'll have my guy Brett McCormick out there. We'll have some coverage on Louisiana versus all y'all from that one in Memorial Stadium. Josh Preston chiming back in with some Darren Coates love. Darren Coates is a guy, 2028 edge rusher for St. Aug, who was a big part of giving those good but young Rummel tackles some fits in that first meeting. But on to Division I non-select top seed Ruston, 51-13 win over Westgate. They advanced to face Southside, the 8th seed that had themselves quite a back and forth battle for a lot of this 8-9 matchup with Terrebonne, but they opening up a 56-42 victory down the stretch. Central Baton Rouge 46-32 win against East Ascension. That was another one that had some back and forth to it. Max Gassett, the quarterback for Central, had a huge game, over 300 passing yards and over 100 rushing yards as well, to help lift the Wildcats on to the quarterfinals, where they will face a familiar foe in the Zachary Broncos, who went over to their former district rival Denham Springs, got a 44-21 win, and now will head on to the quarters for a current district rematch with Central, a game that we've said before was decided by a 2-point conversion there on the night before Halloween in district play. Bottom half of the bracket, the one that I was at, Ouachita Parish gets a 21-19 upset of 3rd seeded Destrehan, and so the 14th seeded Lions, Benji Lewis and company, after going through some of those losses in district, are back in the quarters for the first time since 2021. They will face Parkway, a team that they scrimmaged and got into a scuffle with. And so we don't get the Hanville Destrehan matchup, but we get a little bit of nastiness between 2 teams from down I-20 from one another, as Parkway has to go into overtime against Hanville and survive 37-31 at home, where they will host Ouachita Parish next week. That Barb team that we talked about at the beginning, Jordan Griffin and company, just keep on running and rolling. They go out to West Monroe, get a 42-35 win to advance past the Rebels, and they will head right back up to the Ouachita Parish and Monroe area, to the east side of the river this time, to face 2nd-seeded Neville at Bill Rupel Stadium. Neville with a 31-14 win at home this past week against Mandeville, and so will now host Barb. Up top, Ruston, Southside, Jared Baugh, Jess Curtis. Speaking of some history there, those 2 guys will lead hard-nosed, physical teams that will get after each other, certainly on Friday night. As you look at Bearcats and Sharks, what stands out other than probably some bruises on Thanksgiving weekend?
So, it would be really easy to talk about the tough schedule Ruston has played, with playing, the Acadianas, basically trying to, it seems like win a share of a Texas state title with all these non-district Texas schools they keep playing. And then they get into their district where they play against Neville, who's still playing, Ash, who's still playing, West Monroe, who was a top 10 seed. But I want to pivot, and I want to talk about the really tough schedule that Southside plays. All right, so Southside opens with a scrimmage against Catholic High. We've done that for the past couple of years. And then they go right into Notre Dame, Westgate, Madison Prep, 1, 2, 3 to open the year. I remember last year at our scrimmage, Coach Jess Curtis was telling me about their non-district schedule, and he said, "Hell, might as well just schedule the Dallas Cowboys Week 4 with the way we're opening the season." And so then they go into district play and they beat a Barb team who's still playing, who we're going to talk about in a second. They lose a 3-point game to an Acadiana team. They get a statement win, 70-35 over Karen Crow. And then in the playoffs, they beat a Prairieville team who's up and coming. They beat a really, really tough Terrebonne team. And so, like, it's not really just Ruston who's battle tested going into this matchup. Like, Southside has seen some of the top programs in different classifications in the state and some teams that are still playing right now. And so, Jess Curtis, I've never seen Jess Curtis not have his team ready to go in November, no matter where he's at, no matter who he's facing. So that's going to be a really fun matchup. I don't think you can just chalk it up to the 1 seed on this one. I think it's going to be a slugfest. The second game there, I talked when the bracket release show came out. I remember I described the U High as a pissed off football team. And I'm starting to think that I mentioned this to a friend of mine the other day. The Zachary Broncos, to me, seem like a pissed off football team. A team that knows that their regular season did not go the way they expected it to, even though they got a win over Plaquemine, who's still playing, a win over Acadiana, a win over Karen Crow. They have some slip up in districts, and then they go put it on a really tough Denham Springs team. So I want to shout out, obviously, Coach David Brewerton, who everybody knows, but a name that people won't talk about as much is the job Matthew Zito, the defensive coordinator, did, who's a good friend of mine, against a very good Denham Springs offense, holding them to just 21 points, which obviously you and I talked last week. After that EA game, Denham Springs was scoring points like it was nobody's business. You're talking 42, 44, 46, like just over and over again. And so the ability to slow them down was incredibly impressive by Matthew Zito and his defensive staff and those kids. And now it sets up a super fun district rematch that was, like you mentioned, 35-33 back on the night before Halloween. And so obviously Zachary's going to have that fresh in their mind like it just happened. And they're going to be ready to go. And that is a super, super fun Baton Rouge area matchup that we don't get all that often, especially at this point. And then you go down, man. I said 2 weeks ago that Ouachita Parish might be the best 6-4 team in the history of Louisiana football. And so far the lines are proving me right. You and I have talked about on air, off air, text messages. Going and winning at Destrehan is so hard. All right. No matter if it's week 1 or the semifinals, it doesn't matter. It is a really tough place to go play. And so that's a huge result for the Lions. And now they travel again, much shorter travel over to South Bossier to take on the Parkway Panthers, who took care of a really, really pesky Hahnville team. And like you said, 2 teams that have seen each other once before. Granted, it was a long time ago when you look at the grand scheme of the season, but 2 teams that know at least a little bit about each other. And then at the bottom, man, doubt the Bar Buccaneers at your own peril. Because they just keep on doing things, man. Like the way they run the football right now, there might not be anybody in the playoffs running the ball as well as Barb is. Hanging 49 on South Lafourche, 42 at West Monroe, which we talked about how hard it is to win at Rebel Stadium. Obviously, going to number 2 Neville is an extremely tall task for the Buccaneers, but I ain't counting them out. I'm not making that mistake. And so this is going to be a really fun matchup. Not a flush bracket by any means. You got a 26, you got a 14, you got a 13. This is I sent you this over the weekend. I think this is the most. I think there's 2 brackets where there were 3 non-top 8s make it. And like I said, this is one of them. And so lots of parity in this bracket. There's been some big time upsets. And I wouldn't be shocked if those upsets continue this week with any of these games.
Yeah, I should have brought that back up when we were doing the Division II non-select, but it was the Division I non-select and Division II non-select were the 2 where you have 3 double-digit seeds in each advancing to the quarters. Yeah. And so when we were talking kind of at the outset of there was some notable chaos on the big schools non-select side, that's where we're getting to with some of this. And Jordan Griffin the last few weeks has kind of put his name on the football recruiting map as well as anyone with monster numbers for that Barb team. an LSU baseball commit in that 27 class. The next challenge up, though, going to Neville, a really good Neville Tigers team that I kind of looked at in this bracket as, despite being the 2 seed, maybe as much the team to beat as anyone, just because of Ruston coming in kind of banged up, losing the fantastic sophomore running back and Dalen Powell, and having to deal with some of that. But I mean, Ruston's been great, obviously, in their first playoff win. But Barb Neville will be fun. Ouachita Parkway, super fun. That was a game that even down late, Destrehan, I could tell the confidence that the Destrehan guys still had, and Ouachita had to battle out all the way through the end of that thing, and had a great performance defensively, did enough offensively, had a big special teams return early by Wydell Clark. Huge special teams for them in the first half to get ahead, which for a team that had lost that Neville game in such close fashion and given up 17 points on special teams to Neville, essentially, I thought that watching the way they handled that 4-game losing streak, and not only were not shaken, but really have done a nice job cleaning up the things that cost them in big games and turning those into strengths now, is incredibly impressive for, Coach Benji Lewis, that staff, that senior class that is so talented. And so 14 seed, doubt them at your own peril, just like you said about Barb, the 26, and same thing with Zachary up top. I wanted to ask you for that Zachary and Central matchup. 2 teams, obviously, that you guys played this year and play every year since the districts have changed to incorporate all of y'all together. When you, and I ask you this partially also because you guys don't have to worry about facing another, a district rematch in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
When you do, though, what does the approach look like to that? You obviously, I mean, in a 10-game season, you're trying to win every game. You're trying to win district. You're not hiding things, hoping that, when the playoffs come around, you've got something saved for them. But in terms of not only the mental side for the kids and getting them ready to face the same guys again, but just from an adjustment standpoint on the coaching side, what does the approach look like to a second time around?
Yeah. I think the number one thing is you can't assume anything just because you've played a team before. I've been in situations before where I have faced off against a team more than once in a season. And there have been times where, like, hey, man, we ran, I don't know, just say power, like any run scheme. Like, hey, man, we ran power for 350 against these guys. And then the next time you can't run power for an inch. And you have to be able to adjust. You can't assume anything. You can't go in thinking, well, this pass concept or this coverage or this blitz or anything like that worked so well the first time. We'll just do that this time, and that'll be our bread and butter. Like, that team watches film too. You know what I'm saying? So, like, Deuce Harrison, our defensive coordinator at Catholic High, who well, who's a legendary coach in my opinion. He always says the enemy gets a vote. When it comes to the results of these games, right? And so just you can't assume anything. You can't hang your hat on a certain scheme or coverage or anything, like I said, pass concept that just worked really, really well. You got to be ready for anything. Like, they might run stuff against you in the second match that you've never seen before, all right? Or they might come out and say, hey, we're going to beat you with the same stuff. And, like, it comes down to, can you stop it this time? Can you figure it out? You're going to have an extra trick play or two definitely in your pocket when you see a rematch like this with somebody. You're going to have practiced a fake punt for the last 3 weeks that you didn't run against them the first time that you maybe are holding on to, that you didn't need that night if you're the team that won, and you might pull it out in a situation where maybe you're trailing in the second matchup. And so I think all bets are off. I don't think it's just, chalk, like you like to say. I just don't think that you can go into any matchup with any assumptions about what happened the first time, because I have seen teams get their doors blown off. They get them again, and they get the upper hand. I've been a part of a game where we lost by 1 when I was a player. We see that same team in the quarters, and we get destroyed. Like, it's just one of those things where, like, you can't assume anything. All bets are off. These are not the same teams they were 4 weeks ago, for good reasons and bad reasons. Some teams are banged up. Maybe a guy had a really big game the first time. Maybe you had a player out the first matchup that now he's healthy. And so you can't really assume anything when you're facing a rematch, especially late in the playoffs, especially two programs that are so well coached. The job that David Semino does on one side, David Burton does on another. Both guys, born and raised Baton Rouge guys. Brewerton's a Catholic High alum, Semino's a Parkview alum. Guys that really just have been a part of winning football their whole life. And obviously the defensive staffs that both of them have, Matthew Zito on the Zachary side, Anthony Camp on the Central side, who, those two always have their names in the conversation when head jobs come open. So far they've stayed put, really both in good spots where they're at as defensive coordinators of two tremendous programs. Honestly, it's just like there's no way to even predict based on the first game what's going to happen. It's probably going to be a completely different game than it was the first time, and I think both schools know that.
I'm going to give you a chance to look through these real quick. You last week, as you mentioned, called that Lutcher Franklin Parish game as a candidate for the game of the week. And so I'm going to kind of read through some of the comments again and thank folks that tuned in. And when we wrap up with those, you kind of give us your pick of other than Catholic Alexandria, where you'll be, obviously give us one that you think has a chance to be the game of the week. But again, we had Micah Jones Merrill, who was the shout out early on about seeing me at the Ouachita game. I told Benji, man, it was good to see those guys. I'd hope to try and catch them while I was on my Monroe swing to go see that Neville Alexandria game and didn't get a chance to stop by. Just the schedules didn't work out. And so I was glad I got a chance to see Ouachita this year. See, Mason Plays was shouting out the Car Evangel game. Appreciate you, Mason. TC, as I mentioned, my man down there in beautiful downtown Vacherie, saying to keep an eye on that Oak Grove and St. James game. Our guy James Pickle Piker with the shout out early on. Gibbs Ant, who I know has been with us, if not every week, certainly the last couple of weeks, shouting out the East Feliciana Tigers. So appreciate you for stopping by. We had a bunch of comments we were kind of having a conversation essentially with Josh over some of those Catholic League teams in St. Aug and Edna Carr and company. And so appreciate Josh for chiming in some. He does such a great job covering certainly the New Orleans area, but gets a chance to hit the road a little bit as well. And is not just super active with high school football coverage, but basketball and so on. And so folks should go check out Josh Preston's video vault. And then our guy from a couple weeks ago, Bayou Booty, Louisiana Treasures. Kinder is ready for that Union Parish rematch from last season. K-Town train rolling. So shout out there for the Kinder Yellow Jackets from Bayou Booty. And then we got a new one in here from Waterboy Tiger, Neville Tiger here, hoping our defense stands up against Barb. We've defended the run really well, but going to be very excited on a cold Friday night. I think the weather may finally be kind of hitting us a little bit. I thought we were getting it a little bit a couple weeks ago, and it was just a brief cold front, but I think it's starting to kind of creep down. And Jordan Griffin and company for that Bar Bucks team have been rolling, certainly. I don't know what his numbers ended up being against West Monroe, but we talked about it last week, and he was at like 600 yards and 12 touchdowns between week 10 and the first week of the playoffs. But Neville's been strong, man. They've got that great safety duo that kind of headlines the defense, but there's talent all over the place. When I saw him live, that Neville and Alexandria game that was against an Alexandria team I mentioned has a really good rushing attack. They were without Case and Williams that game, but nonetheless, Neville was in the backfield a lot, was really after Carson Sellers, Noble Williams and company, disrupted a lot. And so it was a really impressive performance by a team that, like some others we've talked about, appears to be kind of peaking at the right time of the year. But all right, Chance Hester, what is your pick for the potential game of the week this week? One that folks should, wherever they may be in person, keep an eye on what could be a good score to watch on Friday night.
All right, here we go. Oak Grove, St. James. All right, so I looked at all the brackets while you were running through the comments, but man, I can't get my mind off of, and some people might say I'm small school biased, and you're damn right. And so Oak Grove and St. James, man, beautiful downtown Vacherie, as you mentioned. Two teams, both with 2 losses this year. 3 of the 4 of those 2 losses are still playing. And both with marquee wins this year. So if we look at Oak Grove's schedule, They lose week 1 to Calvary, still playing. They lose to Mangum, still playing. And they have a marquee game that they dictated against OCS, who's still playing. All right. And then you look at the St. James side. St. James lost to a Terrebonne team that was a second-round playoff team, extremely talented. They lost to a Shaw team by 4, who's still playing. And they have that marquee win against St. Charles Catholic, who's still playing in a 1 seed in their bracket. So these are teams who have the history, they have the marquee wins, and they have played the schedule to help prepare them for this moment. All right, so Oak Grove, 8-time state champion. They have won 4 state titles in the split era, 2019, 2020, 2022, and 2023. The St. James Wildcats are a 5-time state champion. They won it back in 2019. They've been several other times, obviously, and they've had some heartbreak in the Superdome in recent years. 2 teams that have produced incredible talent. All right, just in the last couple of years, obviously the quarterback from Oak Grove, Bradley, that goes on Louisiana Tech. You have you could talk a lot about the St. James athletes that they produce every single year. Obviously, like the Preston brothers. I think I have nightmares still about Luther Ambrose running up and down the field on the Calvary team that I was on back in the day. The fastest human being I think I've ever seen in my life. And so, 2 teams they've got the history, they've got the resume, they have the coaching staff, and they have the kids. And this is a Poydras Street Superdome quality matchup, and we're getting it in the quarters. And so, no offense to any other game, but that is where my heart is going to be. Obviously, my physical heart's going to be at Memorial Stadium on Friday night for Catholic High and Ash. But man, Oak Grove St. James, like that is going to be a fun matchup. And it's so hard for me to not just highlight that one as my potential game of the week.
As you said, a dome quality matchup that won't be in the dome. It'll be in beautiful downtown Vatry. And I know the atmosphere there will be electric. I imagine Oak Grove will travel pretty well. I know St. James will be electric in terms of their support of their Wildcats. And for all of the history of each of those programs and doing some huge things, I don't know that there's much, if any, history between the 2 of them crossing paths, at least not recently. St. James has run into Union Parish and Sterlington a ton, and obviously Oak Grove plays both of those guys, whether they've been in the same district at points or having some non-district matchups. And so a lot of kind of mutual rivals this time of year, but it'll be really interesting to see Oak Grove and St. James actually see each other for the first time in quite a while, if not ever. I'm sure this is one of those things that someone will chime in and say, they played in 1987, Jared. Like, why don't you?
Why don't you know that?
Yeah, but that's a fun one for sure. And again, appreciate TC for chiming in earlier. And we have another little game mentioned, shout out of U High versus Madison Prep rematch will be a nice game, which, as we talked about, those games have been battles. Almost not every single time has been a close, hard-fought battle, but the vast majority of them in recent years, since those 2 teams have been in the same district, have been, including the district game this year, in which Lorenzo Cooper had a pick 6 that decided the thing. And so there's a good chance that's where I end up. It's kind of a deal like with the Acadiana Karen Crow one, where I text them and say, hey, appreciate you guys playing twice so that I, get a chance to catch one. But great games all over the state. As Chanch always says, make sure you get off your butt and get out there and get to some of these games and go support these high school students, coaches, these schools. This is a year-long process for these teams to get to this point, and there are only 3 weeks left of high school football in Louisiana. There are only 64 teams left playing football on Friday night. And so it's some great football, and the final opportunity is to go show your love for these folks. But get out there. I'm Jarrett Roser from Louisiana Versailles. He's Chance Hester from Louisiana Football Report. And unless you have anything else to add, man, good luck to y'all this week. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and to everyone who chimed in. Looking forward to being out there on Friday night, man. Y'all be well.